Hi there. Just wait for everyone to join. Let me see. We've got. Hi Rupachita. How's things? Yep, it's nice and sunny here too. Had a good weekend. And Phil? Yeah, we went for a walk yesterday, and it was a bit strange because in the sun it was very hot, but as soon as the wind caught you or you were in the shadow, it was yeah, it was quite cold. So, but nice to see the bright sunshine. Okay, I'm just gonna switch this. Good. It says my YouTube's a bit uh, might be buffering slightly. Anyway, you can let me know in the comments if you see any buffering, so that'll be good. I'll just pull this up. There we go. Hi Ellie and Teresa. So yeah, so we're starting a different theme now. We're moving into landscape painting. So hopefully you'll enjoy this. Obviously with the nice weather, even though we can't go out as normal, I think there's still quite a lot we can do in terms of practicing our landscape painting. So hopefully it should be quite useful. One of the things I'm hoping to do actually is we'll stick with the same format, is that we'll have 3 classes a week. And I was thinking maybe for some of my demonstration paintings I might do some master copies. So take landscape artists who I really like and try and recreate them, and hopefully that will give us an opportunity to talk a little bit about technique and how to get some of those effects. If you're finding it difficult to get out or you can't find anything particularly inspirational, then just simply copying paintings of artists that you really like, perhaps impressionists, Monet, these sorts of people. That in itself could be really good practice. It's definitely one of the things I sort of recommend in the class, which is for people to have a go at master copies. So, and Stuart, nice to see you, Stuart. Right? Okay. So let's get on. So here we go. Planning. Oh. Okay, so I'll just say a little about this idea of planning your painting. So my experience of landscape painting is there was a period when I had finished work and I created a little studio in my room, and so I was creating art that way, setting up still lifes and doing bits and pieces like that. And then I had this sudden sort of, I thought it would be really nice to go and paint outdoors. So I bought myself a easel and a sort of lightweight aluminium easel. And I biked just slightly outside of Ipswich, just near under the Orwell Bridge and out towards Freston. And I set up this easel in a field and had a look at, there were some trees and I was looking down sort of the side of this field, and I just had a go at painting that sort of relatively simple scene. And I remember that experience. I remember thinking, oh yeah, this is really enjoyable and this is what I would like to do more of. Okay, what's interesting about that, and so that's really painting outdoors is how my own landscape painting has developed. but it's sometimes the problem with it is there's your planning has to really happen when you're there and on location. Um, and in some respects that's good because it forces you to look for compositions and find something. But on the other hand, um, you can, if you don't give it enough time to think about what you're doing, you might miss things, or you might just look at something and think, oh, that's really nice, and maybe it perhaps doesn't work quite so well in a painting, or other things that we'll discover perhaps aren't as accessible to you when you're there on the spot as when you actually deliberately plan your painting. Okay, so I think it's probably best to do both. It's quite good to go out and just try and sketch, draw, or paint from life, and that sort of forces you to think about composition in a very quick way. But then every now and again, actually planning a painting and thinking it through will also, it's a good process to do, but it will also help you when you're out there on location. A good example of this is that I used to go out to this spot up near Freston again, same sort of spot, and I would paint looking up the river. And in some respects, my subject there was just simply the atmospheric effect, the weather passing over water, which, you know, is a good subject. However, it meant that the view that I painted really could have been any river, anywhere. So it wasn't so much like Suffolk or the River Orwell. The paintings could be regarded simply as a river, which, you know, that's fine. If I'd have turned round though, I had the Orwell Bridge looking into Ipswich, and there it was a much more clearly identifiable scene. So, and at the time, I wasn't really thinking about that. I wasn't thinking about, well, what do people want to see in a picture, or what's important. So sometimes doing this planning process, it can just help clarify some of these ideas for you. So hopefully you'll find it useful. Okay. So we'll look at these different approaches. Oh, that keeps folding back. Okay, so yeah, one approach to landscape painting is you simply go out and you use a viewfinder. Okay, and you sort of do this sort of thing, or you actually have an actual viewfinder, and you go out and you look for compositions. Now, what there are two sort of ideas. There's one idea in landscape painting is just where you're looking for compositions. And those compositions are based really on ideas such as colour and tone, line, and they're more like the formal aspects of painting. Okay, so you could think of it, it's almost like the underlying, we'll call it formal. Okay, I've heard other artists describe it, I'm not sure if that's the right term. Formal sort of painting, where, as I say, your main concern is just simply the arrangement of things. Okay, this is compared to more sort of narrative painting, and that's where you are concerned with the things. So as I was saying, painting light on water is perhaps more formal. It's not so much about where you are or what's going on. If you paint the Orwell Bridge, it becomes a bit more narrative. It's an identifiable thing, and people can see it and understand what you're looking at. Okay, so there are two different approaches. And as I say, the using the viewfinder and just going into nature, that's really what I've done more of. So I'm actually hoping to do a bit more of this planning myself. One of the ideas that I've been coming up with well, for a few months now, would be to try and do maybe 12 good pictures of, well, it could be Ipswich, it might just be one of the parks or views of parks in Ipswich or some sort of theme, and try and do 12 good ones that are enough to make a calendar. So that would give me a little project, and that would involve some planning. So we'll see how that goes. So those are the two broad approaches, and what we're going to be concentrating on is the idea of actually thinking through your painting almost before you get to this stage of being out on location. Okay, so the first thing you might brainstorm, say you've got your little, say you've got a sketchbook or something like that, is you would think about subjects and themes. Okay, and so what I'm suggesting here is that you actually write this down, is you get a few pages out and you just start to list things that interest you. So I sort of made a little start here. So I'm particularly keen, I like just views of water. Water is always a good subject, almost in its own right. There's an artist, Fritz Thurlow. I'll try and dig out some of his paintings. Very good at water, ripples of water, like rivers, stuff like that. Then Suffolk. Suffolk may be a bit broad, so you could put Suffolk coast or rivers. These are just my own sort of ideas. Then I've got this idea of maybe doing a series on Ipswich. And then also I'd thought about allotments. Then you could do one specifically on just sheds. So you see, one idea leads into another, and that's what I want you to start to write down. Okay, and this you could even go into these. You could say, well, why do I like sheds, or and so there's one book. What's his name? Ruskin. John Ruskin's book on drawing. He has this thing about finding things that communicate age. So sheds that are sort of slightly falling down or in a state of disrepair might be more artistically interesting than a brand new shed at the bottom of someone's garden. So thinking about age and time and how you communicate those ideas in a painting, they can almost be again like sub themes. But you go through this process. I've written about this on my website, that I always encourage my artists, working in themes is a good idea anyway. You'll often find a theme, you'll get the effect of the whole being greater than the sum of the parts. Okay, so when you see all these paintings together on a theme, they start to communicate with each other almost and sort of reinforce each other. So yeah, coming up with a theme would be very good. Although I'm going to be trying to set some sort of themes as the weeks unfold. But going through this process yourself would be very useful. Okay. Okay, so we've gone through, we do a bit of brainstorming. Now, if I was going to do Ipswich, say I wanted to do this idea of the calendar, then I might do a bit of research. I might sort of have a look at this and think about iconic. What's iconic to Ipswich or to Suffolk, or such and such? And what that means is if I go, say I go into Christchurch Park in Ipswich and I take a photograph of a tree, that tree isn't necessarily going to be iconic to Ipswich or Christchurch Park. It will look basically like a tree, unless it's, let's say, a particular tree that everyone knows and identifies. So if you're doing a bit of research as to what is iconic, you can look at, what do people visit, what appears on sort of tourist information material, that sort of thing. And through that process, you might come up with a whole other set of subjects. So like Christchurch Mansion, the museum, the Willis Faber building. Now all of those could again become themselves subjects. So the Willis Faber building, you could easily do 12 paintings of just that in different sort of from different viewpoints. But this finding what's iconic is useful. It's useful from the point of view of helping your paintings connect with people. So if you're looking to sell paintings, or you're looking to, just affect people with your painting, so they look at it and it evokes feelings or memories, it's useful to do things they recognize. People, they like the fact, they recognize that street or that house or that particular thing. And although you should never neglect the quality of your painting, if you do something people recognize and like, then they'll like your painting almost, not regardless of how well you paint it, but it works on a different level. So it's a good thing to identify. Okay, so let's say we've done this Willis Faber building. We've gone through this process of doing a bit more research. Okay. Then what I would do is I would go through the process of we would gather reference. So there's a couple of things there. Firstly is you go out and gather your own reference. So that makes life a lot easier from the point of view of painting, because you don't have to then ask your photographer, for permission and that sort of thing. However, it's good to, perhaps do a bit of a search and look at your subject and maybe see how other artists or other photographers have treated that subject. It might just give you some ideas, because not all reference, I can go down and take a picture of Christchurch Mansion one day and it's going to be sort of overcast sky and not much happening weather-wise. Or you could do it, early morning, the sun's just come up, there's a frost. So different times a day are going to give you different effects. So you should be aware of that when you gather reference. My suggestion is to go, when you're going out collecting reference, there's this thing called the golden hour in photography, and I think specifically it relates to just this hour before the sun goes down. But I dare say it might apply in that first hour when the sun's come up. So basically early AM, PM, okay? You'll get more effects of colour and light and that sort of thing. So that's when I would go out to gather the reference material. Okay, and you're looking to collect. The more you've got, the more you can bring it back, work with it and sort of see what you've got. Okay. So you've gathered some reference material. Now it doesn't have to be, this could be photos. But I would also encourage you to do sketches. And this is an idea I really like. As an artist, I can't remember his name. I'll have to look him up. But I saw a video last year, and what he liked to do is when he goes out to a location, and again he's got his camera and he's looking for sort of views, is to use your mobile phone and make an audio recording, and you record. That's going to pick up the ambient noises around you, maybe the birds whistling or the sound of the wind, and you might say a few things, about what that scene or that particular situation evokes. Okay, and so we'll put audio recording. and notes. So this is good because what you're trying to do with landscape painting is you're trying to evoke a mood, okay? And that how you evoke that mood is more important than, for example, how accurately you depict things or whether you include everything. So becoming more sort of tuned into the moods of different locations and nature is, and the more you can, so you tune into it and then you can try and put that in your painting. And that's going to help you break away from just pure representation to perhaps playing with colour and design in order to, say, bring out moods and atmospheres, okay? So yeah, making some notes, that's a good idea. And again, varying the times of day, varying the weather conditions, that will help also, okay? But, you know, it's a nice day today. I could go for a walk and I'd probably get some great pictures. But, you know, with landscape painting, some of the best weather conditions aren't sunny and bright, but are going to be more misty. And the mist will give you more atmospheric perspective. So don't just think sunny days are going to make for better paintings, okay? So those are the first stages. Okay. So you've got back home and you've got your reference. So go through your reference. And then what you can start to do is say you've got your sketchbook and you can then start to, you've identified your subject. Then you can start to play with composition or designs, okay? So designs. Now here it's useful again to break it down into 3 components of line, tone and colour. So this is for art. I mean, some people won't want to do this much planning, okay? But if you do, say you want to make this, you know, you really want to make this very sort of like special painting, you would perhaps spend a bit of time with all these things. Now, I'm going to go over some books. At some point, I'll film a little video with some books I recommend. But with this line idea, let's do a little, so let's imagine you're doing a little house or something like that, okay? And here is a tree in the foreground. So you think, oh, well, that's quite nice. Okay, it may be with a sun here, a sun to balance it. So you think, okay, well, that's a nice composition. So you do another one, and you could do all sorts of things here. You could change the format, okay? So you could have your same sort of tree in the foreground, and then we could have this a bit closer. And we can move the sun lower there. Okay, so and let's see, we'll try another one. So this is a bit like our, this is more like your close-up. Perhaps that's not so nice there, the way this tree obstructs that house somewhat. So anyway, you would play through that almost at this sort of size in that sort of manner, not spending too long, but looking for different ways to arrange it, okay? So different things will, so this suggests itself to me now, which is a more cinematic one. Okay, here we've got our tree coming up. And this time we'll put the house low. there's our house and there's our sun. Maybe something like that. So that's a low horizon. That's what I was thinking there. Okay. So you go through those, and again, you're sort of scribbling away, and you're just thinking about. So you're looking at your reference, and you're thinking more about, well, how can I best play this off? Is it going to be? Do I need lots of sky, or do I need to get in close to the subject? And that would be. That's really at the level of line, and then here I've started to introduce tone. Okay, so maybe I could say, well, I want my building to be, my subject to be illuminated. So we put the tree's going to be dark, like so, and then we'll make that white. So we're going to make the sky more of a mid value. Something like that. Okay, and you play with these simple levels of tone. Okay, and you come up with various sort of solutions. So again, we'll look at this idea of no tan, which is the idea of looking at just black and white arrangements, and you know, a good black, as I said before in my still life subject, a strong tonal composition, that will also, that's what you need with your landscape painting. That should help if you can think tonally. And then colour, again, colour, thinking about the time of year, different colour arrangements. Again, colour's very closely related to emotion. So what colours are going to help bring out the mood? So if your mood is very quiet and sort of sombre, then it might be greys and a bit more muted. If you use very saturated, bright colours, then it's going to have a very different emotional feel. So you would sort of think all that through, basically. Think about, what's going to help. Now, how are we getting on for time? So we've got a bit more time. So so you go through these designs, and this is the sort of point where, now I was going to talk a bit about these armatures, okay? And this is one of the themes we're going to cover. And I've got several books that have sort of different schemes for these, different ideas, and there are loads of them. And behind them sit various principles. So principles to do with how your eye moves around compositions. So just to give you a few of them, we've got things like, oh, there we go, in focus. So like a circle. Okay, an L, an S, okay, and a cross, radiating lines, quite a good one. Triangle. Okay, so those are sort of some common ones. There are some others that we can go into, and each of those. So an armature. An armature is, the example I give is like sculpture. So say you're making a head out of clay. So you normally get some newspaper and you wrap it round, and you have a stick and you wrap that round, okay, and that is your armature. And then you put the clay around here, and that gives you your basis for your head. Something like that. A bit of a big nose. There we go. So an armature is a structure that sits under something and gives it its support. Okay, so in a landscape composition, these shapes give you a sort of, they're ideas that you can then hang a painting on top of. And by hang, what I mean is I say, once you've learnt these, what you're looking to do is to, they're the basis for your design, but you also want to disguise them. So people don't say, oh, look, he's done a circle composition or he's done a triangle. So you want to sort of disguise them, but they're very handy. And even if at the beginning you make them a bit sort of like, you perhaps may overdo them slightly, they're useful things to know. They also have inbuilt within them things such as they will take your eye over the center line. Okay, so there's this idea that you should try to move a person's eye over the center of the picture, maybe a couple of times. Okay, there's another one, which is this idea, which is that you take the picture plane and you have it in quarters, and then you have something of interest in each quarter. So for example, let's say we've got a little bush there that leads through here. Okay, and maybe what would we have here? So maybe a fence or something. Then up in this one we've got our little house. Okay, the smoke gives interest there, and then maybe you balance that with, I don't know, a little bird or something. So the idea is you have something of interest in each quarter. But these devices are very handy. Okay, and what I'm going to do is, I think this week what I want you to do is just simply make a start. Come up with several themes. If you can go out and start collecting reference and do some sketching, that'll be good. I'm going to do a master copy on Wednesday, but we'll go into all these in more detail. But just to give you an example, let's. So I'm thinking of Alison here with her tree. Okay, so the tree in the foreground is a great, example of an L. Okay, so you have the tree, and then that's usually going to cast some sort of shadow. And what that does, now you see it's a bit explicit there, it's a bit obvious what I'm up to if you've sort of studied this sort of thing. So that creates an L, and then the L sort of creates a frame, and then within that frame I can then put a focal point or something of interest. So we could have, let's say you've got a path and maybe a village or something in the distance. Okay, so that would be like an L composition. So say we'll go through all of those, and maybe they will provide us a sort of sub theme each week, is that we can go out and we can look for those in nature. But I'm going to try and collect some reference and maybe see if we can find examples, and then go into that in a bit more detail. Okay, so that's armatures. And as I say, that helps you when you're planning. That helps you both at the taking the reference photos. If you've got these in your memory banks, then it will help you take better photographs. But also at the planning stage, it can help you sort of see compositions. I remember one of the first ones. I'll just show you. And again, if I'd edited this, I could get the painting I did. I remember when I went out, I bought this easel and I went out painting, and I've been studying this material about armatures, and I was looking at this scene, and it was something like this. So again, it was more of a formal design because it wasn't really a specific place, but what I saw was something like this. So there was some sort of reeds or something like that, And then if I remember correctly, there was a bit of shoreline. Maybe even like that. Okay. And that shoreline was coming up to the... Now, what I saw within, I'm just trying to remember how I saw it now. So what I did is I saw it as an S. Okay. I think maybe, so I think I saw it as a reversed S, because the cloud came like, it was something like that, okay, and then that came like that. So that's perhaps not the best illustration of the point. But the fact is, let's say this was a cloud, and it was perhaps a little bit more disguised than that, so it might have had these little, something to sort of break it up slightly. But the fact was, it was a case of that I suddenly saw the shape, the S, where previously I would have just seen it, and it sort of helped me, like, how do I relate this curve here to something that's going on in the sky? Oh right, yes, Teresa, yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, I'll try and dig some out actually. I mean, that again might make a nice video. I could just show a few of mine, just where the armatures work. And again, the armatures, often when you're out painting, I say you don't necessarily, you just use your viewfinder and you think, oh well, that looks nice, and that sort of balances. And so in that case, you might not necessarily tune in so much to armatures, but I certainly know, like, I did a painting recently, Nacton Shores, and again, this is like this is like volume scale perspective. So if you're looking down the beach, there's like a tree here and some other trees there. So you get, basically, it's almost like radiating lines, okay? And there's the water, and then there's another, like the shoreline comes down there, okay? So this would be dark, this is like, and then that's like the water, so, and then maybe some people. Okay, so like that's often a radiating line composition, something like that. But again, I don't tend to think so much as radiating line. But it could also be useful because you could think, well, instead of the clouds going across the sky like that, you could have more. You can have clouds which go into the distance like that. Okay, as if you're looking down, big at the top, smaller at the bottom. Okay, now you can see that's overdoing it somewhat, because it's all a bit too much radiating lines. But again, you could apply the theory there. Okay, so armatures, so that's something we're going to be looking at. Then tonal values, no tan, again, good tonal design, this is good. Dark land, I might put that church in again, as people like it. Okay. Now, the reason I like it in a way is because it's a simple silhouette, but it does a lot of work, you see. Now that's a good, for me, I think that's not a bad tonal design, because it's very simple, it relies just on silhouette. It might be a bit too simple, but as long as I kept to this sky could have like subtle colour variation in, but as long as I stuck to the idea of this is light and this is dark, then you've got yourself a tonal composition there. Okay, you could even, if you're working with silhouette, you could say, we could also have like a tree. As you say, this complicates it, but something like that. But yeah, you work out your dark and light arrangements, and that's also quite a nice thing to do. This is what I was saying, think like a printmaker, lino cuts, stencils, just simple tonal images. Okay, Now, I'll just say a bit more. Ooh. Okay, I could probably just whip that out. There we go. Okay. So now, depending on what level of how involved you want to get with this, you would then, so you go through this phase: small sketches, thumbnails. Okay, so you've got those. So you've worked out your tone and your colour. Again, you might use filters for the colour. You could use that on your phone or your tablet. You could play with colour balance, just trying to get something that, again, evokes the mood that you're interested in. Or you might even have a theme. One of your themes could be colour. Hi there, Owens. Nice to see you. So, yeah, you could play with the... you might have one of the things they say on social media, say you've got Instagram, is you can have like color palettes to all your photos, for example. So it can be quite useful with your paintings to say, well, I'm going to make all my paintings nudge towards, I don't know, turquoisey blue or pink or red or something like that. So that when you take in, say you've done this series of work, they all look like they're part of the same series. So you can do that with colour. That's one option. But anyway, you think all that through. And then you basically paint the picture. And you can do various things there. You could transfer the image. Okay. So if you've done sketches, you could transfer the sketches. If you've got photo reference, you could even grid up and transfer your image like that. Some people might not be so keen on that. Or you could just simply set up your reference and start to paint directly, okay, and just work it out as you go along. So either of those is perfectly valid, and they're going to have different strengths and weaknesses. So we'll look at those perhaps as we go on. And yeah, once you've got your big canvas, you then work on it and work on it. And all the sort of ideas that I've been talking about with my still life painting, you still try and do that with your landscape, i.e. perhaps you tone the background, you try and block everything in, and you try to bring the painting together as a whole, as opposed to spending a couple of days on one tree and a couple of days on another tree and working around it that way, okay? So, yeah, you try and keep some energy in it. One of the troubles of working on a big painting indoors versus outdoors is outdoors you have a certain pressure of time and the light changing. One of the dangers of working from photographs indoors is that you have all the time in the world, and then you can get very detailed. And some people like that. That's not say, it's not a bad thing. But if you get so detailed, then I would argue that it becomes too, you lose something of the mood and the atmosphere. So to me, there's something about quicker brush marks, these more impressionistic brush marks, a bit of ambiguity, maybe sort of things are a bit sort of out of focus. That's going to create more atmosphere and maybe even more of a sense of realism than a highly finished painting where every little area has been sort of very neatly rendered. Okay, but that's just my own personal preference. Okay, so you paint the picture. And then you could say, well, that's the end of the process, start again. But what I'm going to try and encourage you to do, and also myself to do, is to engage in a certain degree of reflection. So you probably come across reflective practice and this idea. So I think how I like it is this sort of scheme, which is you plan, which is what we're talking about, then you act, okay, and then you reflect. Let's keep it simple. And then that feeds into planning and acting and reflecting, okay? So what this means is planning is what we've been talking about. Acting is you do the painting, and then you make this a bit more explicit. You sit down and you say to yourself, what worked in this painting? What didn't work so well? How could I improve it? You could do all the sorts of things we've been looking at with Photoshop, or you could adjust the contrast. Is it clear enough? You know, have you made a simple enough statement, or is it too boring? Does it need more detail? Maybe ask. I mean, you could always ask me. You could send me the picture, let me know, and I could give you some feedback. Or you could ask friends of yours. Family members are normally quite happy to give feedback on art, as I've discovered. Yeah, so you get some feedback, you reflect on it yourself, and then you very quickly try to feed that back into planning another one, okay? And you keep this process rolling. Now, if you don't reflect, you can just basically do a painting, it doesn't go so well, and you think, oh well, you know, I'll just do another one. But this is your big opportunity to learn and increase your, you know, develop as an artist. So doing a bit of reflection is something I would strongly recommend. And this is where having a sketchbook that's functioning more as a notebook can be quite useful for your painting. Okay, so there we go. So that's how to plan for a landscape painting. That's really the theory. And then what I'm hoping to do over the coming weeks is to explore this in practice slightly. We're going to go through that, but I'm going to probably, say, break it up with a few of these master copies, and that will give me an opportunity to perhaps discuss some of these compositional ideas, but also look a little bit more about technique and other sort of subjects like that. So if you have any questions, you can either leave them in the comments or you can email me. My details are on here. And that also helps me think about what to put in the next lesson. But as I say, for those of you that are painting along, as I say, what I would like you to do this week is I would like you to start to make a list of all the subjects that you would like to have a go at, and then go out there, collect some reference material, and then without any more guidance than I've given you here, just make a start. Find one. And I'd rather see 3 sketches of the same subject that explore different perhaps viewpoints or compositional ideas. I'd rather see 3 of the same thing than a great big finished painting at this stage, because what I'm really interested in is the planning. Okay, so that's your homework. And say, email me if you have any questions. And if you get those into me by the end of the week, that would be great. And then, say, on Wednesday, I think I'm going to do a master copy. Okay, perhaps Edward Seago, who's always a good one to start off with landscape painting. Anyway, so I hope you found that useful. If you like the video, please give us a like down below, and subscribe if you haven't done already. And I'll see you later in the week. So thanks a lot. Oh, I'll say one more thing. For those of you that are doing the Zoom meeting, yeah, Zoom will go ahead, let's say 11:05. Okay, so I'll see you later. Bye. Oh, I'll say one more thing. For those of you that are doing the Zoom meeting, yeah, Zoom will go ahead, let's say 11:05. Okay, so I'll see you later. Bye.